Welcome to the Mind Body Weight Loss Summit. I'm John Gabriel, author and creator of the Gabriel Method, a diet-free approach to sustained weight loss. And I'm very pleased today to be joined by Magdalena Wszelaki, who will be sharing her knowledge of thyroid and hormone balance for health and weight loss. Magdalena is the founder of Hormone Balance and Thyroid Diet Coach, nutrition coaching practices that help women to rebalance their hormones with nutritional and lifestyle changes. Magdalena is a certified nutrition coach, speaker, and educator with a long history of hormonal challenges, including Hashimoto's disease, an autoimmune condition causing thyroid failure, adrenal fatigue, and estrogen dominance. Today, she's in full remission, lives a symptom-free life, and teaches clients how to accomplish the same in her online coaching programs. To learn more about Magdalena as you're listening today, please visit hormonesbalance.com. Magdalena, thanks so much for joining us today. Can you tell us, first of all, a little bit about your own journey, your own health journey, and how you became a hormone expert?
Sure. I think for a lot of practitioners who are really passionate about what we do, it always starts with a personal story, right? The same way it happened to you. And so for me, it's no different. It started off, eventually I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease and adrenal fatigue and estrogen dominance later. But, these things never happen in isolation. And typically we start doing detrimental things to our body way before that, and a lot of times without even realizing that's a lot of these issues are a problem. So, in my case, it was the fact I was not a breastfed baby. I was put on a formula, right away because my mom bought into the 1970s craze of, mother's milk is never as nutritious, right?
Science is God, chemicals are God, and we know better kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in the first month, I already ended up in a hospital with pneumonia. So just that tells you how weak my immune system was from day one. And then, as a child struggling with eczema, with colic, I was crying for the first 2 years. I was apparently crying nonstop. Mom had no idea I had a lot of food sensitivities that were causing all of that. And then, growing into an adulthood as a young adult, horrible cystic acne and real big impact on my self-esteem, because you're talking about having it everywhere here, having it on my chest, having it on my back, having it on my butt. I was covered in acne. And again, food sensitivities were playing a big role. Always a lot of digestive issues. And then started working in advertising. So same as you, horrendous stress. And, it was all about being a resource, and they really work you. They pay you a lot of money, but they work you. And I lived in China for a big part of my life, China and Hong Kong, Shanghai. Very high toxicity levels, as you could imagine. And, everybody talks about that, how polluted China is, and that is still the truth. And that was especially back then when I was living there. So, accumulation of toxicity all around my body and compiled with horrendous stress. And just the kind of, I think culture we live in that goes, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Kind of a thing. And, it pains me even now to talk about this, like how I would come home at 9 o'clock from work and I'll be so wired up, unable to sleep, that I would put on my running shoes and run from where I was living to the river, which is about 10 kilometers or 6 miles, and then grab a taxi back home and take a long hot bath until 3 a.m. to cool down. This was all like screaming symptoms of adrenal fatigue, and I had no idea. I was exhausted after exercising. So, but when you're tired after exercising, you go, I've got to do more. I'm not doing enough, right? And all of that was just impacting me. So all of that led into Hashimoto's disease and adrenal fatigue. And then, and I've managed to make so many different changes. Went to nutrition school just to help myself because doctors were offering very little help with that. And for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease that causes underactive thyroid condition. So a lot of people with hypothyroidism think that it's a thyroid that has failed them, where the reality of it is that is the immune system that gets into a point of mutation, typically because of a lot of digestive issues. That's the starting point for most people. And as a result of that, starts attacking the thyroid. And because of that attack, we get the thyroid starts slowing down. So we develop hypothyroidism. So that's my story. But, the good news is, and that's one of the big messages that I carry around with me today, is that things can change,
Yeah.
and you can recover.
So so where are you with your Hashimoto's disease and with your adrenal fatigue and the other autoimmune issues, and obviously the acne, the skin is cleared up. What happened with all that?
It's all gone.
And how did that happen? How did that process? Was it immediate? Was it gradual? And what did you do?
Very gradual. I mean, you know, I wish I had somebody like you or me who I could just go to and say, tell me what to do. You know, there wasn't, I mean, back then when I was diagnosed in 2008, there wasn't really a resource for that. So very gradual. And I think even if somebody's equipped with the knowledge like right away, changes are not going to happen overnight. And that's the whole premise of functional medicine. You know, it took me 40 years, it took me maybe 30 years to get to this point. It's going to take a couple of years to reverse it, right? So it took me probably 2 good years. You know what, John, the biggest thing is, and I know you work with this a lot, is repairing the digestive system. So addressing all food sensitivities. In my case, it was gluten, dairy, and eggs were my problem, but everybody's different.
I want to talk about that because the first thing you said was you weren't breastfed. And and I know that's going to cause digestion issues, and it's going to cause immune issues, and then you were under chronic stress, and those two things together, in our experience, when we're dealing with thyroid issues and autoimmune issues, is if you can deal with digestion and stress, you get great recoveries. That's what we've noticed. I'm wondering if you can talk about that, like why, because you weren't breastfed, how that caused a problem.
You know, I mean, there's everybody, a lot of people don't realize that the mother's milk offers such an incredible number of nutrients that are really essential for a well-functioning immune system. But it's also the mother's bacterial flora becomes, which you get from the mother's milk, from her breast, from her skin. But also most people don't realize this. Actually, when we first come out as babies, we are sterile. And we get inoculated with the first gasp of our probiotics and bacteria. We get that from the mother's reproductive organs, from her vaginal, health. My mother's health was nowhere close to being good. I mean, she's been struggling with digestive issues her whole life until about a couple of years ago. So she's only changed her habits. She didn't know about that back then. And so her bacteria became my bacteria. They were weak, and so my immune system was weak. So that was a big part of it, and I never had the benefit of that. One of the big things, for people who are not breastfed, we are very low on all the bifidobacterium, and so it's really, really important when we're doing probiotics is to do a probiotic has got a good spectrum of the bifidobacteria, because that's one way to replenish your gut to something that innately we never got.
And then also on the same note of bacteria, you had mentioned that you had really bad acne. Did you do the thing that many people did as teenagers where they were on antibiotics for long periods of time? Did you do that also?
Yeah, I had to sign waivers that I wouldn't get pregnant.
Yeah. And so when you're on antibiotics for long periods of time, you're killing all your friendly bacteria. Is that right?
Of course.
So you started out not getting the bacteria that you needed, and that caused the problem. And then you went and took more drugs to further kill whatever few bacteria you did have. Is that? Yeah. And then where does that leave you? So to me, that's like the exact opposite of functional medicine, basically. It's treating the symptom, which is the acne, but the real cause is that you don't have friendly bacteria in your intestines, and then you're taking antibiotics, which are killing your friendly bacteria. And,
and that results in a lot of things that we don't connect the dots, which is like perpetual UTIs, urinary tract infections.
Yeah.
And ear infections, and sinus problems, right? Yeah. And again, you take antibiotics.
And food insensitivities. And then you get viruses very easily, and you get all kinds of things, and infections very easily, and then you take more antibiotics, and it's just make the whole system worse and worse.
It's painful to even talk about this today, right? Because you realize, but then again, it goes to a point of, goes just what I said earlier, that we have an incredible ability to recover, and our body was designed to heal itself. And so, as much as this might be very disheartening for people to hear and finding themselves in the same story, going like, oh my God, I've been put on a series of antibiotics for so many years. Yeah. We can change that, and that's the beauty of our body.
Yeah. So how does this affect weight gain? There was an interesting study recently. There's so many people are now studying the bacteria flora in our intestines and how it affects weight. And honestly, I really believe that we're in the infancy of understanding that. And people like you, hormone experts like you, that are functional medicine hormone experts, are really in the forefront of this. But there was a study recently where they took identical twins. And you know the study. So they were identical twins. One was fat, one was thin. And they took the bacteria from the fat twin and they put it into the intestines of mice, and those mice got fat. And then they took the bacteria from the thin twin and put it in other mice, and those mice didn't get fat. And then they took the bacteria from the thin twin and put it in the mice that got fat, and those mice got thin again. Nothing else changed except for the bacterial flora. And I think it's blowing people's minds because we're sitting there saying 0-calorie diet soda and don't eat this, don't eat that. But the reality is this bacteria, which we know nothing about, could really be impacting weight gain. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the bacteria in our stomach affects weight gain.
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, there's quite a lot of studies now coming out that our bacterial flora really impacts the expression of our hormones. Yeah. And so that's one part of the equation. The other thing is that, one of the main things that I see with weight gain, and I suspect you see that as well, and that's why you have so many people asking about the thyroid, is because a lot of women have thyroid problems, and men too, but it's more of a women's thing. And the thyroid, our thyroid is like a metabolic. It is a metabolic panel, so it's a gas pedal that our body presses on in order for our metabolism to work, function properly. Now, how this is connected to the gut is that you're talking about 90% of thyroid conditions are a result of Hashimoto's, which is, like I said before, it's an autoimmune disease. Autoimmunity starts in the gut. The immune system lives in the small intestine in the upper part, the first part, duodenum. And this is where, your digestion is in a mess. You develop Hashimoto's, which is one of the most common autoimmune diseases that women get as a first autoimmune disease. A lot of times it leads to other autoimmune diseases further down the road. That impacts the thyroid. The thyroid stops functioning properly. We put on weight. We're not converting fat to energy as we should. So we are not only fat, but we're also fatigued, right? Yeah. So those two things are happening. So that's how the thyroid function, starts. And then you have a number of different other hormonal imbalances which contributes to weight gain.
So what can we do about it? Because if you go to a doctor and they say you got Hashimoto's disease, I mean, there's some really extreme things that they're going to want you to do. They're certainly going to want to have you take some sort of medications, but sometimes they cut out parts of the thyroid. They say it's not incurable. You're going to have it for the rest of your life. A lot of people have lost their thyroids have been cut out completely from Hashimoto. So a lot of people that are listening have either slow thyroid or Hashimoto's. What should we be doing?
Right. So, the first thing is to get a proper diagnosis. A lot of people who have hypothyroidism tell me, I don't have Hashimoto's. Don't say that. Don't assume that. Ask your doctor to test for it first. And it's a simple test. You're testing for two types of antibodies. Antibodies are typically elevated when the immune system, that part of the immune system is on fire. You're talking about TPO, which stands for thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and TGB, which stands for thyroglobulin antibodies. And those two, if any one of them is elevated, that immediately confirms Hashimoto's disease. So getting diagnosed properly is one part of the equation. And then you might say, well, if it's elevated, what do I do? The first simplest thing, it goes back to repairing your digestive health. And I think the first biggest starting point is figure out what are your food sensitivities. I always work the big sevens, which is gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, nightshade vegetables, which are potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers, and yeast. Those are the big sevens, we call it.
What are the yeasts? What would you give as examples of yeasts?
Like drinking beer, for example. Yeah. That's okay. That kind of yeast. Nutritional yeast is very different because, we all have yeast, and those are the good kind of yeast. I'm talking about yeast like coming from breads, like a lot of gluten-free breads still will be using yeast. A lot of people are sensitive to that.
I see. Bakers like baking yeast. Let me ask you about eggs for 1 second, because I have always hated eggs. As a kid, it was like a joke with my family. They would give me something and they'd want to see if I could tell there was an egg in it, and I'd take a bite and say there's an egg in there, and everybody would laugh. I could not stand eggs. But what I learned was that what I really can't stand is the whites of the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And someone told me that there was albumin or something. There's something in the whites that make it hard to digest, and I can't digest it. But the yolks, I can eat them all day. And so now I'll have an egg yolk omelet as opposed to egg whites. Is there a difference from a digestive health perspective between the whites and the yolks?
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. There is no fixed rule to this.
Okay.
It all goes back to by individuality.
Yeah.
One person can tolerate eggs and not whites, and vice versa. It's more common that people have a problem with the whites that they have with the yolk. But again, you gotta. So it's a good point. You know, when I work with an elimination diet, which is a really simple way of really anybody can do this yourself if you offer it, if you really want to take charge of your digestive health, is to eliminate those 7 foods. Don't think about what am I going to eat. Just surround yourself with foods that you will be able to eat, right? Because all the vegetables and meats and fish and seafood is still allowed, so that's all good. And then when you take out eggs, when you reintroduce them, then do egg yolk first, and then do the egg white next, and then your body will tell you.
And so when you're reintroducing the foods, how do you know if there's a problem or not?
Your body will tell you. So the typical symptoms we're looking for is things like, digestive issues right away. So you get bloated, you get constipated, you get gas.
Stuffy nose maybe also.
Oh my God, yeah. Stuffy nose, itchy ears, skin. It's a very telling organ, right? So eczema, headaches.
So eliminating problematic foods is one thing. What about adding things that we need to repair the digestive health?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So, I'm a very big traditionalist when it comes to eating the way we used to eat 100 years ago.
Yeah. I even say 10,000 years ago. Like if you were on an island 10,000 years ago, pretty much everything there is good for you. It's got friendly, healthy bacteria, nuts, seeds, salads, meats, all different animal proteins, yeah? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, so my 2 favorite things, go-to foods, it's a really great point you're bringing up. It's not just about cutting things out, but it's also about bringing things in, right, to your life.
Because if you look at your situation in the beginning, your problem wasn't that you were having problematic foods. Your problem was you weren't getting enough friendly bacteria from mother's milk. You know what I mean? So
I think it's a combination of both, because I have a big sensitivity to gluten, and I was still eating it, and that was not a very good thing. So can I just tell you about the 2 foods I really like for restoring digestive health?
Yes,
I'm
please.
super passionate about those, so I gotta tell you.
I am all ears.
Do you want to guess?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to guess what it might be? What's my favorite?
Are they foods or are they supplements? So we're talking about probiotics? So I would say some sort of fermented food, like maybe like a fermented sauerkrauts or kimchis or coconut kefirs, something like that, or sprouts. All of them would have friendly bacteria in them, was my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So sprouts, I like to ferment sprouts as well. So it's like a double joy that you get out of that. Absolutely. And, I come from an Eastern European background. So we used to ferment. My mom used to make sauerkraut at home, and we always had dill pickles. So, I'm bringing all of that back in. And I actually have got a cooking show coming up. I don't know if I told you this.
No.
Cooking for hormones balance. So. So that's gonna be, and the second thing, which is really my favorite, are bone broths. I'm actually drinking one right now. Bone broths, which is just the most marvelous thing you can do for yourself, with replenishing calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphate, giving you vitamin B's in it. So heading up to farmer's market, getting farm-raised animals, grass-fed animals, putting those lovely bones into a big pot, getting those going.
I think I was talking to someone about this, about bones and organ meat, and also bones and all these things that we don't typically eat, that they've got something in it. I want to say collagen, but it's not collagen, but something like that, right? That repairs the lining of our intestines. So one of the problems is we get this leaky gut where we got tears in our intestines. And then all these toxins going overworks our immune system, and then there's something in there that repairs that. Is that right?
Yeah, so,
have you heard that?
No, you are totally right. It's collagen, it's gelatin, it's L-glutamine, and all of those are found in very large numbers. Think about it this way, how we buy these really expensive skincare products, and it says that it's got collagen in it, and everybody's paying big bucks because it's collagen, so it's going to repair. So collagen does work, but actually it has to be collagen derived from animal proteins, and we are not allowed to use collagen derived from animals in skincare products in the United States. It's not allowed. So The ones that you find in cosmetics, they are synthetically derived. They're completely useless. But it's true that collagen, if you get it from, from animal protein, it will help with scarring, it will help with the skin. So think about it this way. If it helps on the outside, it will help on the inside as well. That's exactly the same premise.
That makes perfect sense. Now, everything we're talking about, we've been originally talking about for thyroid health. Is this also true for people with adrenal fatigue and other autoimmune issues? Is this advice sort of universal for improving the immune system and improving energy? Is that correct?
Yeah, this is a really important question. I don't really want to spend, unless you have specific needs for this, but I don't want to be leaving the listeners with with going, oh, if you have adrenal fatigue, you eat this. If you have infertility, you eat that. Yeah. As there are 3 body systems that govern really good hormonal health, right? And the first one is, as we talked about, digestion. Every time you have digestive problems, your body perceives it as stress. And because of that stress, we release cortisol. Our body doesn't know the difference between stress from you being robbed or having a nasty boss or having digestive issues. Stress is stress, and cortisol gets released. And cortisol is an incredibly potent hormone. We couldn't live without it, but at the same time, it can shut down our progesterone receptors. It can mess around with the thyroid. It's super, super potent. So digestive issues equal cortisol release. That's the first thing we need to repair is digestion. Number 2 is your sugar levels. People who have hypoglycemia, who crash and when they are hungry, who are moody, unfocused, pass out when they are hungry, right? That shows you it's a state of hypoglycemia. Again, that creates a big insulin release. It creates another cortisol spike again. So it's going back again to that lovely stress hormone cortisol that creates so much havoc on your body. So that was number 2, sugar levels. Number 3 is the function of our liver. John, one of my biggest revelations 2 years ago when I was diagnosed with estrogen dominance and having lived a really clean life. And I was like, why on earth do I have estrogen dominance? And it turns out it's because of the years of, what I was doing before. My liver was very far from being fantastic. And what most people don't know, and I was never told this before either, is that our liver is the organ that is metabolizing and getting rid of metabolized hormones. So when the hormones are used up by the body, by all our cells, right, for bones, for hair, for skin, for mental functions, when they get used up, the blood takes it back to the liver, and it's in the liver that these guys, the metabolites, gets basically pumped out through our bile, and then it goes out. We poop out our hormones. Literally, that's what it is. So when your liver is not functioning optimally, and it's so hard to know because there's no test for good liver function unless you are really, you've been an alcoholic and you've been on some kind of drugs, and it's like in the last stages. But before that, many people don't realize that when you're sensitive to coffee, if coffee makes you jittery, if caffeine makes you jittery, if you're sensitive to smells like perfumes, you don't like flying because you feel so overwhelmed, a lot of it could be because of your liver is really suffering and you're not detoxifying properly.
So what you're saying is when your liver's suffering, you're not able to break down and eliminate the hormones that should be released from your system. So you've got hormones floating around that shouldn't be there, and it's causing all kinds of confusion in your body, and
exactly.
So your body's not working optimally. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And your glands think that you have, there's a loop mechanism in the body. So our body thinks that I have sufficient amount of hormones, I'm not going to be producing anymore.
Yeah.
Where actually these hormones, they should have been out, but they are not. And so that's why we're also underproducing.
All right, so what about some practical tips for cleaning the liver and making an optimal liver function?
Detox. I mean, detoxing through fasting. And I'm not talking here about a lemonade diet. We can talk about this in a second, and neither through relying on supplements alone. A lot of people think they're going to buy a bunch of supplements and the liver is covered. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. When we undereat, that's when the liver gets the chance to work on the backlog, right? So, one of my favorite things to do is to do a juicing fast for 3 to 5 days with specific herbs and, vegetables like dandelion is wonderful. Anything that's bitter.
Anything bitter.
Will stimulate the liver function.
That's right.
Parsley is wonderful.
Milk thistle also, I think I've heard. Milk thistle?
Yeah, milk thistle is a seed, so you don't juice it. Milk thistle, you can take it as a powder, but you have to be careful with milk thistle because it is also estrogenic. So how some women respond to it by actually developing tender breasts and having more PMSs. So milk thistle is wonderful, but not for everybody. So with caution. Yeah, and juicing your lemon, including the rind. Every one of these foods that I'm mentioning works on a different pathway in the liver. And every one of our pathways have a responsibility of detoxifying us of different things. And I just want to mention one more thing, John. A lot of people have done the lemonade diets before, right? Where you just drink lemon and water and cayenne pepper and I think maple syrup for like 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever. I'm not a fan of those because what happens is when you understand how the liver works, the liver needs to have specific compounds in order to marry them off with the toxins.
Yes.
In the phase 1 of the detoxification of the liver, all of the toxins get broken up. In stage 2, we need to provide substances and compounds that that attach themselves, whether it's sulfur, whether it's methyls, and then once they're marrying off, that's how they can get eliminated.
Right.
So lemonade diet is not going to offer that, and that's why a lot of people have very severe side effects.
Right. So what you want is, if you're going to do some sort of detoxing, you want lots of different juices, lots of different vegetables in there, so that it'll have the compounds that it needs to eliminate the toxins. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And just a word of caution for people who have a thyroid condition, you do not want to be juicing cruciferous vegetables. So like kale and broccoli, you don't want to juice those because they do tend to slow down the thyroid function. However, they are wonderful when they are cooked, lightly steamed, sauteed. They are fantastic.
So that takes care of the issue if you steam them.
Yes.
So sometimes, like we're doing a detox for our people in the next week from now, or very soon, we're going to do a detox. And one of the things, we do juicing, but we also do broths. Mm-hmm. So for people with thyroid issues, it's better that they take the cruciferous vegetables. They don't juice them, but they put them in the broth, and they have them that way. Is that right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yes.
And so, and just also, you talked about how you lived a very high stress life and how your body doesn't differentiate between a mental stress or the stress of digestive problems. I'm just wondering if you could talk about how mental stress affects us on a hormonal level also.
It goes back to that hormone that I talked about, cortisol, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I think especially as women, I think we were built differently than you guys. And this goes back to our, back in the day. I mean, as women, we sat around a fireplace and that's why till today, we still nurture each other, right? Like, women is the women's thing where we sit down and we advise each other. And things have changed. And, I'm all up for women being in a workforce and having careers and, and running their own businesses, because that's what I do as well. But there is a price to be paid, and often. And I think, especially as women, we see a lot of our self-value and self-validation comes from the workplace. And we push and we push and push, and we work these 12, 14 hours a day, where I noticed that a lot of my male colleagues could handle it, where I would be, it wore me out. Yeah. So I think it's just to understand that as women, we are somehow built differently, and it's just a matter of honoring it. So I'm not saying don't build your career, don't have your business, don't work in a corporate environment. If that's what you love, that's what really nourishes you. But it's just really important to to have the respect for yourself and really listen to your body. That when adrenal fatigue steps in, and you can look it up online so easily what adrenal fatigue symptoms are, feeling tired after exercise, getting lightheaded when you get off the sofa, can't sleep at night, wired and tired. I mean, those are all very clear symptoms. Honor that, and step back is going to ruin your health.
Yeah. So if people want to understand more about how to take care of their hormones this way, because when you're talking about stress, also for women, it affects men too. If they're overstressed, it just affects them slightly differently. So if we want to learn more about how to really balance our hormones for effective weight loss and regaining health and autoimmune function and digestive function, what's the best way that we can connect with you?
Hormonesbalance.com is my website, hormones with an S at the end. There is a great quiz, which, helps you just to understand which hormones could be at play here. So this is just an indication. This is not a diagnosis by any chance, but it gives you an idea of, is it a thyroid, or do you have your adrenals are compromised? And a lot of times for a lot of women, it's a combination of all, many of them, 2, 3 hormonal imbalances is very, very typical.
So we can go online to hormonesbalancing.com. Is that right?
Hormonesbalance.com.
Okay, hormonesbalance.com. And we can take this test for free, basically, and it'll give us, excellent, great. All right, so, can you just tell us what else you got coming up? You mentioned a cooking show. What's happening?
So my cooking show is going to be a big thing. Again, it can be found on hormonesbalance.com on my website, because that's the entry point to everything. And, John, I'm going to be teaching people how to apply really simple recipes, but using them medicinally, and really teaching about, how food really impacts our biochemistry. And those 3 things that I talked about, liver, sugar levels, and the gut function, it's going to be. And then I have a little bit more specific stuff, like if you have adrenal fatigue, or if you're trying to get pregnant, what are some of the foods? I'm not a professional chef, but yet I'm a really good cook. And so, it's that's how the program.
Excellent. I'm really excited about it. So if we log on and take the quiz, then you'll let us know when the cooking class comes. Is that right?
You're gonna after the quiz, people have a choice of signing up to my mailing list, and you get something called the Hormones Balance Starter Kit. Yeah, it's a 47-page document that tells you exactly what you can do tomorrow to take health to your hormones into your hands. Yeah. Once you're on my mailing list, you would know about the cooking show coming up.
Awesome. Magdalena, this is amazing information, and I just wish more people were out there doing it. I mean, your story, the way you've been able to heal yourself, and it speaks to really everyone. We've all had digestive issues. Like when I was growing up, we thought that you had to have fluoride in the water. That was just, my dad was a dentist, and maybe it was great for my teeth. I had really strong teeth, but we all suffered from weight issues, and we were all tired, and it was killing all our friendly bacteria, and there was lots of other things too. So we all have these issues, and we don't know what to do with it. And the information you're putting out is fabulous. So on
that note, did you know that fluoride was used in 1950s to treat people with hyperthyroidism, so overactive thyroid?
So the whole point of fluoride is to slow down your thyroid, is what you're saying.
And that's what we're drinking in the United States on a daily basis.
We went out of our way to get fluoride, but we all do these things, and especially you and I. And we grew up in this time when, as I said, science was God. We really felt like we knew more than nature, because we knew a little bit about chemistry. And boy, we're only just now beginning to realize how wrong that is. But you're out there telling us, and I really, really appreciate your information. So thanks so much for joining us today, Magdalena.
Absolutely. My absolute pleasure.
Great.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks everyone for listening. This is really, really great functional, holistic information about how to treat some very common issues such as slow thyroid, estrogen dominance, adrenal fatigue, and other autoimmune issues. So I would definitely listen to this interview if you can a couple of times, because it's just so packed with really, really great and unique information. So thanks very much, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.